and this is the first time I've ever won anything as an actor. 30 years ago, I had a producer tell me that I was a popcorn actress, and at that time, I made that mean that this wasn't something that I was allowed to have, that I could do movies that were successful, that made a lot of money, but that I couldn't be acknowledged. And I bought in, and I believed that.
And she wasn't the only one.
So smile!
When The Substance was first screened at Cannes Film Festival, the director and writer, Carly Fargett, got to stand and listen to a nearly 11-minute standing ovation, not to mention winning the Best Screenplay award at Cannes. This outcry of joy for the film was further cemented by its release into global theatres. Critics adored the film for its narrative on women's bodies, and the performances by actresses Demi Moore, Margaret Qualley, Dennis Quaid. He's not an actress, but he was in it. Anyway, The Substance is a story of greed, but also the very real and fantasized depiction of how women's aging is treated in the media. Demi Moore plays Elizabeth Sparkle, a once famed star who gets fired as the company look for a newer, younger star. Enraged by this, Elizabeth gets tipped off about a new drug that can help her. This drug then creates a younger version of herself in the most disgusting and literal way possible, thus creating Sue, played by Margaret Qualley.
So smile!
Carly Fargett shows how capitalism sedates its audience, expecting them to stay asleep as greed replaces beauty. In Mark Fisher's Capitalist Realism, he states that being realistic may once have meant coming to terms with a reality experienced as real and immovable. Capitalism realism, however, entails subordinating oneself to a reality that is infinitely plastic, capable of reconfiguring itself at any moment. This is shown in The Substance with the capitalistic obsession with youth, and the reality being altered between the rejection of Elizabeth and the acceptance of Sue, and the then acceptance of the Elizabeth Sue monster with their Sue mask on. Meaning reality can be subverted by the capitalistic media, or by the monster wearing the mask. Capitalism functions as a driving force that pushes aging women to the margins of their professional lives. Within the world of The Substance, Elizabeth represents women in society who find their value and opportunities diminishing as they grow older, showing that professional success is closely tied to youth and beauty. This is not the experience of men, however, as Dennis Quaid is at the top of his profession in the movie and in real life. You can see this with the list of movies he has done over the last few years, against the list that Demi Moore has done. Roles for men around this age are much easier to be cast in, so it's clear to see that this is a consequence only for aging women. The Substance is a film heavily rooted in showing how gross capitalism can be and is towards women, by showing these greasy men in suits and giving them disgusting close-ups of them eating, smoking, and these wide FOV shots of their faces and blank white smiles. These corporate suits will stand there while the CEO will belittle or love-bomb these women for their bodies. Han argues that we have internalized capitalist ideals, essentially meaning capitalism controls us. But we think we're in control as our minds reframe it, as Han lays it out, saying, "We live in societies of control. We are entrepreneurs of ourselves, constantly doing and improving rather than being."
So smile!
A study was shown that older women in films are 4 times more likely to be portrayed as senile than older men. They are also more frequently shown as physically unattractive and depicted in roles that emphasize their physical frailty. This can be seen with Elizabeth, shown later on, after Sue has used more than her 7 days, as Elizabeth has turned into a bitter old crone, or witch. Creed states that the witch is also associated with a range of abject things: filth, decay, spiders, bats, cobwebs, brews, potions, and even cannibalism. This can be seen in Elizabeth's angry cooking scene, as she essentially brews and cooks like a witch would. The idea of the old witch isn't just limited to The Substance. Demi Moore, an actress, has stated that she felt it was over for her as she got older. However, other women in the industry do get roles as they get older, but are more likely to be typecast. For example, Nicole Kidman said in her acceptance speech for winning the Screen Actors Guild in 2018, saying how wonderful it is that our women's careers can go beyond 40 years old, because 20 years ago we were pretty washed up by this stage in our lives. We have proven that we are potent and powerful and viable. Carly Fargett also chose to leave the other body naked in the 7 days between, as it takes away from the erotic nature assumed in movies, or what's also known as the scopophilia instinct. This is done to show that as when one of the duo is inactive, there is no value to them, so they are left. There is no need for modesty, as they are not an object of desire, but an unused vessel.
So smile!
Aging becomes a way of reclaiming autonomy from capitalist control. The Elizabeth Sue monster shows the falsehood that by putting on a mask, it tries to imitate the same positives that Sue's youthful self had. This shows how capitalism within beauty and media reinforced gender stereotypes for profit. Barbara Creed states that the transformative face of monstrosity in society's deepest fears are but the overturning of conventional gender norms and social institutions, which essentially means that capitalism in the beauty and media industry is a social construct. It feeds on conventional gender norms, and this film uses the body horror genre to show aging as an act of resistance, and what a liberation could be. Rejecting youth obsession equals reclaiming identity. Once Elizabeth realizes she is Sue, and that her time is of her own, Elizabeth reclaims her life by indulging in those things she was denied of. Because of her newfound freedom from the male gaze, she is no longer performing for desirability, which is shown in the substance several times through the value of women coming from the male gaze. A powerful and symbolic moment in the substance that perfectly illustrates aging as liberation is to the figure of the monstrous feminine, especially when viewed through the contrast between how the creepy male neighbour interacts with the young and beautiful woman versus the aged and monstrous woman. The aged woman in the substance becomes powerful, not in spite of being monstrous, but because of it. Her transformation repels the male predator, reclaiming her body from the consumption and turning horror into liberation.
Pretty girls should always smile.